The flight was supposed to be routine, smooth, uneventful. But no one could have predicted what would happen on this particular flight. Inside the bustling airport terminal, a woman named Carla was preparing for her journey. She was confident, poised, and didn't look out of place in her sharp uniform. Little did the passengers know, Carla wasn't just any flight attendant. She was about to play a role in something much bigger than anyone could imagine. As the plane ascended into the sky, the tension in the cabin was almost palpable, though it seemed like nothing was out of the ordinary. That is, until a passenger, Raven, a confident young woman with a business-like demeanor, boarded. Raven's presence was calm but powerful, almost regal. And what no one knew was that Raven wasn't just any passenger. She was the owner of the airline everyone was flying with, but she hadn't revealed herself yet. Carla, for some reason, didn't seem to like Raven from the moment their eyes met. Maybe it was the way Raven carried herself, or perhaps it was the way people naturally gravitated toward her. But there was something about the situation that just felt off. The flight was nearly halfway to its destination when the first signs of trouble appeared. A small dispute broke out between Raven and a rowdy passenger who had clearly crossed a line. Carla, who had been observing from the front, swiftly approached. Her movements were sharp, almost too quick. There was something simmering just beneath the surface. "Excuse me, miss. I think you're causing a disruption," Carla said, her voice tight. But Raven wasn't having it. She stood up, her eyes locking with the flight attendants. "No one tells me what to do," Raven replied coldly. "If there's an issue, take it up with management." Carla's face tightened. The situation had escalated quicker than expected, but Raven was standing her ground. What the other passengers didn't know was that Raven was more than just a passenger. She was the person who could change things for Carla's future. And that realization would come soon enough. As the minutes ticked by, Carla grew more agitated. Raven, still calm and collected, ignored the glares that Carla shot her way. The flight attendants were trained to manage unruly passengers, but something about Raven's defiance stirred something deeper inside Carla. "What's the matter?" Raven asked innocently, though her tone dripped with unspoken power. "Do you have a problem with me?" Carla forced a smile. "Not at all. Just doing my job." But her voice wavered. Something about Raven's demeanor wasn't sitting right with her. The calm in Raven's eyes was unsettling, as if she knew something that Carla didn't. The realization hit Carla like a freight train. She was messing with the wrong woman, and that could have consequences. By now, tension had spread throughout the cabin. The passengers began to murmur, sensing that something was wrong. Carla's demeanor had shifted. She wasn't the friendly, professional flight attendant anymore. She was angry. The situation was beginning to feel dangerous. Raven, however, wasn't backing down. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she straightened her back, ready for whatever came next. Carla was getting closer now, her patience wearing thin. "Get out of my way, Raven," Carla hissed. The name slipped off her tongue like venom, but Raven's response was cool. "If you want to throw me off the plane, you'll have to try harder than that." And in that moment, something snapped in Carla. She raised her hand, and before anyone could react, she slapped Raven across the face. The entire plane went silent. The slap echoed in the stunned silence. Raven's cheek was still red as she slowly turned to face the shocked flight attendants and passengers. Carla was standing frozen, her hand still trembling from the action she had just taken. She couldn't believe it herself. It was a rash, impulsive act. Raven's eyes were cold, calculating. She didn't say anything at first, but the weight of the situation began to settle in. A few passengers murmured, some even began to film the incident on their phones. No one knew what was going to happen next. The flight attendants, who had been in the background, now rushed forward. They had to take control of the situation before it spiraled further out of hand. Raven stood still, her calm demeanor not budging. She had not yet revealed who she truly was, but now, that secret would change everything. As the tension in the cabin reached its peak, Raven did something unexpected. She smiled, the kind of smile that sent chills down Carla's spine. "Do you know who I am?" Raven asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Carla's confidence faltered. "I don't care who you are." "Oh, but you should," Raven replied, her words almost a whisper now. "I'm the owner of this airline, and you just slapped the wrong person." The entire cabin went silent again. This time, the passengers weren't just watching, they were listening. Carla froze. Her mouth went dry as she realized the enormity of her mistake. She had no idea who Raven really was. The plane began its descent, but all eyes were on Carla and Raven. The cabin was filled with whispers, the atmosphere thick with unease. The flight attendants tried to regain control, but it was impossible to ignore the gravity of the situation. Raven remained calm. The tension that had once been a simmering heat was now an inferno. The passengers began to speculate about what was going to happen next. Carla stood rigid, her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. The situation was escalating, and she knew there was no going back. Then, Raven stood up. "I want to speak with the captain," she said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Now." The plane had barely touched down when the atmosphere inside the cabin shifted from tense to downright suffocating. Carla's palms were clammy, her mind racing as she stood by the door, trying to look composed. The whispers from the passengers still buzzed in the air, but now there was an unmistakable weight to them. Raven's revelation had left the entire flight in shock. As soon as the wheels hit the tarmac, a uniformed officer entered the cabin, and the air thickened with suspicion. Carla swallowed hard. She knew she wasn't going to get away with this. The reality of what she had done was setting in. She had slapped Raven, the owner of the airline, in front of dozens of witnesses. Raven, who had sat quietly through the chaos, now stood like a pillar of calm, as though everything was just part of the plan. "Carla, I need to speak with you." Raven's voice was sharp, but measured. It was clear she wasn't going to back down. Carla had hoped, just for a moment, that this might be a misunderstanding, that maybe Raven hadn't really meant what she said earlier, that she wasn't the owner of the airline. But the sight of the security guard moving closer only confirmed what Carla feared most. She had crossed the line. Raven stood up, turning her back on the flight attendants as though dismissing them entirely. "I'll be handling this from here," she said. The crew exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do, but they stepped back. Raven turned to Carla. "Come with me." Carla's legs felt like lead as she followed, heart pounding in her chest. It wasn't until they reached the tarmac that Raven finally stopped. "I'm not going to make a scene," Raven said, her voice cool. "But you should know, this isn't the first time you've crossed the line with someone. You're lucky I'm not pressing charges." Carla's eyes widened. She had expected to be fired. She had expected some form of public reprimand. But this was something different. "I'll make sure you're held accountable for your actions," Raven continued, her gaze unwavering. "But don't think this is over. What you've done has consequences. You messed with the wrong person." The weight of Raven's words hit Carla like a ton of bricks. She was the one who had underestimated Raven, the one who had assumed power could only come from a uniform. But now, the reality was clear. Raven wasn't just a passenger. She was the force that could change everything. And as Carla watched her walk away, she realized the truth. She had just made the biggest mistake of her career. The world she knew was about to shift in ways she could never have imagined. Days later, Carla received a letter from Raven. It was an apology, but not from Raven. This one came from the airline itself. The letter acknowledged the incident, the inappropriate behavior, and most importantly, it offered Carla a chance to reflect on her actions. And then, a surprise. Raven herself called Carla. Her voice was calm and matter-of-fact. "I'm not angry anymore. But what you did, it wasn't right. "I'm willing to let this go if you are," Raven said. Carla's heart was heavy with guilt. She realized the depth of her mistake and how far it had gone. It wasn't just about the slap. It was about respect. She had disrespected someone powerful, and that never ended well. In the final moments, the story took an unexpected turn. Carla, humiliated yet humbled, met with Raven face to face. The once stern flight attendant apologized, her words sincere but laced with regret. Raven smiled and nodded. "It's not about the mistake. It's about how you learn from it. You'll be fine." The drama had unfolded, but the ultimate resolution was a lesson in humility and understanding. Carla had learned a valuable truth. Respect isn't something you can take for granted, especially when you're dealing with the wrong person. And Raven? Well, she had the ultimate power all along, but she knew when to wield it and when to walk away.